I'm going to take a few minutes to walk through some of the options for the new Hexbin Scatterplot custom visual, which was newly released to AppSource. And this was a visual that I had originally developed a few years ago under the old or original version of Microsoft's custom visual development tools. And I've now adapted it to their new or relatively new custom visual API. And if I switch over to Power BI here and just look at some of the samples, it's essentially a very, very basic scatter plot that has the option of adding a hexagon grid beneath it. So we call these hex bins, and it's just a way of showing density of the various points within the scatter plot. So it's a very basic chart, but you can see here some different variations where I can have a combination of the scatter plot points underlaid with hexagons. I could have hexagons of different sizes in the format options, which I'll get to in a second. That's called the radius setting. I could hide or show hexagons completely or do the same with points on my scatter plot. And if I go over to format options, I have two main areas, hexagon scatterplot options and axes options. To look at the hexagon scatterplot options, I can show or hide the bins by enabling this setting or disabling this setting, and then this is cut off a bit, but show the bin stats on hover. When I have various points within a hexagon bin, I can hover over the hexagon itself and get the stats. So in this case, a density of 16 means that there are 16 points that fall within that hexagon, and I can choose to enable or disable that particular tooltip for the bins. Changing the color, obviously, pretty straightforward. And then the radius, just how large should these hexagons be. And you can see anywhere from a setting of 10 up to 50. And do I show an outline or a stroke around those bins? And then for showing the points, I can enable or disable the setting to make it a scatter plot or not. And then what color do those points appear, as well as what's their size. And if I do hover over a point, you'll notice that I'll get a tooltip that shows all the data associated with it, and the point will enlarge a little bit just to let you know or provide some feedback that you selected it or hovered over it rather. And then if you hover over the hexagon itself without hovering over a point, that's when you get that bin stats. Let's look a little bit at axes options, and these are very, very basic. It's not as involved as some of the more detailed axes options that you get with built-in visuals. But am I going to show or hide the axes, yes or no? Is it going to show the title, yes or no, so on and so forth. And then the major setting here that's different is, do I display an origin at 0? And maybe I'll click on this chart here, which has it defaulted to off. And you'll notice that my origin here is maybe negative 16 or negative 17 for my y, and maybe about 75 for my x. If I flip this on, you'll see that things change quite a bit in terms of how that displays. So there may be cases where you'd want an absolute origin appearing at 0, 0, but by default that should be off.